This is just disgraceful.
I know, right? She deserves it. Look at her now. She deserves it.
Amara, a quiet black maid working for the wealthy Lexington family, endures daily humiliation at the hands of her billionaire employers, mocked, ordered around, and stripped of dignity in front of guests until one cruel dinner party exposes their racism in the harshest spotlight. Whispers among servants grow. A journalist begins digging, and soon the Lexington's arrogance and abuse of power are splashed across national headlines, their empire collapsing under the weight of public outrage and betrayal from within. Through silence, resilience, and quiet defiance, Amara's suffering turns into a powerful testimony that awakens resistance and forces society to confront injustice, leading to the poetic downfall of the family who once thought themselves untouchable. As karma strips them of everything while Amara walks free with her dignity restored, the Lexington estate stretched across acres, glass walls reflecting the skyline like a palace untouched by consequence. Inside, wealth dripped from every corner. Chandeliers, marble floors, gold-rimmed picture frames. Yet in the shadow of this empire moved Amara, silent, unseen, necessary. Amara, hurry with the wine, Mrs. Lexington snapped, not looking at her. Yes, ma'am. Her hands were steady though, her chest burned. She carried the tray across the dining hall where the family gathered for a late-night feast. Laughter filled the room, sharp and bright, bouncing off the marble laughter that never included her. Mr. Lexington leaned back in his chair, cigar smoke curling around his smug face. Careful with that, girl. Last time, you nearly spilled. She hadn't. She never had. But his words landed with precision, designed to cut. Yes, sir. The air, Brandon, smirked. Maybe she wants to spill, make us all a little more colorful. He glanced at his friends around the table. They burst into laughter. Amara lowered her eyes. Heat climbed her neck, but her voice stayed even. Would you like more potatoes, sir? The young men mocked her accent, dragging out the syllables, repeating them with exaggerated tones. The sound stabbed deeper than the words themselves. Mrs. Lexington waved her hand dismissively. Don't encourage her talking. Just serve. And so she served. She moved like air, like shadow, presence required but never acknowledged. Every plate placed perfectly, every glass filled on time. Perfection kept her employed. Perfection kept her mother's medicine coming. From the corner of the room, she caught her reflection in the glass uniform. Crisp, face expressionless. She looked like furniture in motion. Amara, faster, Mrs. Lexington barked. Guests don't wait for help. Yes, ma'am, she obeyed. Always, but inside, beneath the silence, something else was stirring. The laughter, the nicknames, the mockery, each cut layering over another. The weight pressed, suffocating, reshaping her breath into fire. She refused to exhale. Tonight, she endured. Tomorrow, she would endure again. Yet endurance carried its own sharpness, because every humiliation remembered is a seed, and seeds, once buried, never stay dormant forever. The Lexington dining hall was silent except for the clinking of silverware and the low hum of expensive jazz drifting from the speakers. Amara moved along the table, refilling glasses, her footsteps soft against polished marble. Don't drag your feet, Mrs. Lexington hissed without looking up. Yes, ma'am. Amara straightened her back and lightened her steps, though they had made no sound. Perfection was demanded where error did not exist. Brandon leaned lazily in his chair, swirling his wine. You see how she jumps? Like a rabbit, he laughed, flicking his gaze toward his friend across the table. Bet she's used to running. His friend grinned. Running from what? The cops. Laughter erupted. It rolled down the long table like a wave, everyone joining except Amara, who poured steadily into Brandon's glass. The liquid shimmered crimson, almost black under the chandelier light. Careful, girl, Brandon drawled. This is a $10,000 bottle. More than your life, probably. Yes, sir. Her voice was calm, but inside, the words coiled tight. She kept her eyes lowered, focusing on the rim of the glass, refusing to let her hand shake. Mrs. Lexington dabbed her lips with a cloth napkin. Amara, you're slouching. Stand straight when you serve. Your posture is part of the presentation. Yes, ma'am. Her shoulders stiffened. From the far end of the table, a guest leaned forward, voice dripping with amusement. Does she ever talk about where she comes from? I bet it's quite the story. Dust roads, chickens running wild, little huts. Yes, Brandon chuckled. You're giving her too much credit. Probably just another slum kid who lucked out cleaning our floors. Amara's hands froze for half a second. Then she resumed pouring. No, no, the guest insisted, turning toward her. Tell us, Maid, tell us about your homeland. All eyes turned. The air tightened. Yes, sir, she said quietly. I was born in Chicago. The laughter came harder this time, crueler. Brandon slapped the table, delighted. Chicago. And here I thought you were some jungle princess. Look at her. Doesn't she look the part? Another guest mimicked her accent, slow and exaggerated. Yeses, Mom. Yeses, sir. The table roared again. Mr. Lexington finally joined, puffing smoke from his cigar. That's enough, he said smoothly. His tone wasn't protective. It was possessive. Don't break the help. We need her steady. Amara bowed her head. Thank you, sir. But he didn't respond. His attention was already back on his cigar, as though her gratitude were meaningless air. She moved to clear plates, her steps measured, her eyes never meeting theirs, but inside, she felt the words cut, not loud, not deep in isolation, but sharp enough to leave scars when repeated endlessly. Every insult lodged itself in her silence. Later, in the kitchen, when the dining hall emptied, Amara leaned against the counter. The fluorescent light hummed above her, cold and sterile. Her hands, still steady, gripped the edge of the counter until her knuckles whitened. The sound of their laughter echoed in her mind. Chicago, jungle, princess, girl, rabbit. She pressed her lips together, holding the fire inside her chest where it wouldn't be seen, where it couldn't be punished. But in her silence, something shifted. Because silence is not emptiness. Silence is pressure building, and pressure, left unbroken, always finds a way to burst. The Lexington estate glittered brighter than ever that night. Rows of black cars lined the driveway, polished until they mirrored the golden lamps that lit the grand path. Inside, the ballroom overflowed with power. Senators, investors, socialites, all orbiting around the Lexingtons like planets around a sun. Amara stood by the kitchen door. Silver tray balanced on her palm. Champagne glasses sparkled, and her reflection fractured in every rim. She had worked enough galas to know the rhythm. Glide through the crowd, remain unseen, vanish before the glass was empty. Move, girl. A senior servant nudged her toward the floor. Yes. She stepped out, weaving between glittering gowns and tuxedos. Perfume and cologne mingled thick in the air. Conversations buzzed. Deals, scandals, vacations, words that didn't belong to her world. Near the stage, Mrs. Lexington spotted her. Amara, over here. Amara approached swiftly. You're late. I'm sorry, ma'am. The kitchen enough. Mrs. Lexington's eyes were cold. Take off your shoes. I don't want those heels clicking against the floor. Amara blinked. Ma'am, did I stutter? The words dropped heavy. Guests turned eyes curious. Brandon smirked, already enjoying the spectacle. Barefoot, Mrs. Lexington repeated, voice sharp. Or do you prefer I find someone else to serve in your place? Her mother's face flashed in Amara's mind. Medicine bottles, hospital bills stacked high. She set the tray on a table, slipped off her shoes, and straightened again. Yes, ma'am. Whispers rippled. Laughter flickered from the corners. Amara picked up the tray again, bare feet pressing against the cold marble. Every step echoed louder now, though she tried to float across the floor. Isn't she lovely? Brandon called to a cluster of friends. Our little barefoot Cinderella. They snickered, eyes following her, making her every move part of their private game. Careful, one said. Wouldn't want her to scratch the marble. Amara delivered champagne. Hands steady, gaze lowered. Her silence wrapped around her like armor, but cracks spread beneath. Each laugh pressed harder, each whisper heavier. At the buffet table, a senator's wife glanced down. Shoes? Did you lose them, dear? She didn't lose them. Brandon cut in smoothly, appearing at Amara's shoulder. She's being corrected. The group chuckled. Amara's grip on the tray tightened. Yes, sir, she whispered. Her eyes lifted for a fraction of a second, and something flickered there. Not fear, not submission. Fire. Brandon caught it. His smirk faltered, just briefly. But then he leaned in, close enough only she could hear. Careful, Maid, that look doesn't suit you. Amara turned away before he could see the heat rise in her face. She vanished back into the moving current of servants, her bare feet silent now, her mind screaming where her mouth could not. Later, in the service hall, she pressed against the wall, tray set aside. She closed her eyes. The laughter still rang, echoing sharp, endless. For the first time, her breath shook, but she didn't cry. She couldn't. Tears would only confirm what they wanted her to be: weak, broken, small. Instead, she whispered to herself, low, almost soundless, one day, and the word pulsed in the silence like a vow. The gala stretched into midnight, a parade of shallow speeches and clinking glasses. The Lexingtons glowed under the stage lights, hosts of an empire built on arrogance. Cameras flashed, reporters scribbled notes, though most weren't here to question, only to flatter. At the back of the room, near the press table, sat Daniel Rivera, a journalist whose eyes never softened the way others did when staring at the Lexington wealth. He watched everything: the way servants bent under invisible weight, the way laughter cut deeper than knives. He wasn't here for their charity auction. He was here because wealth and cruelty often danced together. And tonight the steps were showing. Across the floor, his pen still. Amara. Barefoot, tray in hand, weaving through the ballroom as if invisible. But Daniel noticed. He noticed the whispers, the mocking gestures, the way her eyes never lifted though her silence screamed. He raised his camera, pretending to snap shots of the chandelier. Instead, he angled the lens toward her, capturing moments others ignored. Brandon smirking as he leaned too close, Mrs. Lexington's sharp hand gesture. The gleam of humiliation pressed into Amara's face. Near the stage, the auctioneer's voice boomed. Tonight, the Lexington family once again proves their generosity. Applause thundered, glasses lifted. Amara slipped between them like a ghost. Girl, Mrs. Lexington's voice cracked through the noise. Amara hurried forward. Too slow. The matriarch scolded. Do you think donors wait for you? No, ma'am. Then act like it. Daniel scribbled on his notepad. Public rebuke. Tone sharp. Guests amused. Dehumanization disguised as order. His pen carved deep. At the far table. Brandon intercepted Amara, blocking her path with a hand on the tray. Careful, darling. Wouldn't want your little feet cut on the marble. His voice dripped mockery, pitched loud enough for those nearby to chuckle. Yes, sir, Amara said, steady. But Daniel saw the tremor in her throat, the flicker of defiance that sparked, brief, before she buried it again. Click. Another photo. The night dragged, cruelty wrapped in champagne bubbles and applause. Amara's endurance held, but her silence was no longer invisible. Someone had noticed, someone was writing it down. When the event ended, servants cleared the remains while guests stumbled to limousines. Daniel lingered by the press exit, notebook in pocket, camera strap across his chest. His eyes scanned the service hall just once more. Amara passed, shoes in hand now, shoulders heavy but back unbroken. Their eyes met a fleeting second. He didn't smile. He didn't offer pity. He only looked steady, as though to say, I see you. Amara turned away quickly, disappearing into the kitchen's shadows. But the moment lingered, and Daniel's pen had already chosen its target. The Lexington estate was quiet the morning after the gala, sunlight spilling through glass walls like liquid gold. But inside, beneath the polish, tension simmered. Amara folded linens in the service hall, movements precise, her back straight though her body ached. Her bare feet from the night before still burned. Each step on the marble had left a sting, and each laugh had left a deeper scar. The door swung open. Mrs. Lexington's heels clicked against the tile. There you are. Amara bowed her head. Yes, Mom. You embarrassed us last night. Her chest tightened. I'm sorry, ma'am. You moved too slow. You made me repeat myself. And that face, Mrs. Lexington's eyes narrowed. You think no one sees it? That flicker of defiance. Don't mistake yourself for equal, Amara. You are here because of us. Yes, Ma. Single quotes, double quotes. Mrs. Lexington stepped closer, her perfume sharp. You should be grateful. We could hire anyone, yet we keep you. Do you know why? Silence, because you're cheap, and loyal, and desperate enough to stay. Amara's throat burned, but she forced the words out. Yes, ma'am. The matriarch's smile was thin, cruel. Don't forget your place. When she left, the hall fell heavy again. Amara folded another sheet, hands steady though her eyes blurred. That evening, in the cramped apartment she shared with her mother, silence took a different shape. The old woman lay in bed, coughing weakly, medicine bottles lined on the table. Amara knelt beside her. Mama, did you take the pills? Her mother's voice was faint. I saved them. They're too expensive to finish so fast. You can't save them, Amara whispered fiercely. You need them. I need you more. Without your job, the sentence faded into a cough. Amara closed her eyes. She saw Mrs. Lexington's face, smug and merciless. She heard Brandon's laughter, felt the marble under her bare feet. Her mother's words bound her tighter than any chain. She had no choice. She couldn't leave. The next day, Brandon cornered her in the library. "You ever dream of more?" he asked, smirk curling. "No, sir." Good answer. He leaned against the shelf, wine glass in hand. "Because there isn't more. Not for you. You belong here, serving, cleaning, silent." His friends snickered from the doorway. "Say it," Brandon demanded. Amara's jaw clenched. "I belong here, sir." Laughter erupted. Her silence sealed the walls around her. Her mother's medicine, her mother's fragile breath. Every insult chained her tighter to the estate. But chains do more than bind. They also drag, and when they drag too long, something breaks, either the chain or what it tries to hold. Amara's silence was still intact, but it was no longer obedience. It was waiting. The ballroom gleamed again, brighter than before. Another Lexington event, another parade of wealth, wrapped in chandeliers and champagne. Politicians, CEOs, heirs and heiresses, all gathered to feed off each other's power. Amara moved quietly among them, tray balanced with glasses of wine. She wore her uniform, crisp and flawless, shoes polished, hair pinned neatly. She had learned perfection was survival, but survival had its limits. At the edge of the room, Brandon raised his glass. His cheeks were flushed, his steps uneven, arrogance thickened by alcohol. Friends surrounded him, laughing too loud, feeding his ego. He spotted her. "There she is," Brandon shouted, voice booming over the music. "Our little maid." Heads turned. Amara froze, tray steady, though her chest pounded. "Come here," he commanded. Slurring, she obeyed. "Always," Brandon gestured to the stage. "Up there. Go on." Her eyes flicked to Mrs. Lexington, who stood across the room. No objection came, only a cold, expectant stare. "Sir." The crowd chuckled as she stepped barefoot. He had made her remove her shoes again onto the polished stage. Light flooded her face. Hundreds of eyes bore down, amused, curious, cruel. Brandon staggered up beside her, arm heavy on her shoulder. "Ladies and gentlemen, our entertainment tonight." Laughter, applause. Amara's breath caught, but her face remained still. "Say something for us," Brandon demanded. "Give them that accent. You know the one." His friends howled, repeating mock versions of her voice. "Yeses, Mom. Yeses, sir." The crowd laughed harder. Some raised their phones. Amara's throat tightened, but she whispered, "Yes, sir." Louder. Brandon barked, "Yes, sir," louder. "Girl, yes, sir." The room roared. Brandon lifted her arm like she was a puppet. "See, perfect. Always ready to serve." Behind the cameras flashing, one lens lingered longer. Daniel Rivera, the journalist, stood at the edge of the crowd. Camera lifted, recording every second. His jaw clenched, his hand steady. Brandon leaned close, his breath sour with liquor. "Dance for us." "No, sir," Amara said softly. The crowd hushed for a moment, sensing fracture. Brandon's smirk twisted. "What did you say?" "I said no, sir." A gasp rippled through the audience. Brandon's hand tightened on her shoulder, fingers digging into her skin. "Careful, Maid." She lifted her eyes, just once. Fire burned there. Daniel's camera clicked. The red light blinked. Evidence that the silence broke into nervous laughter. Guests unsure if it was a performance. Brandon shoved her back a step, playing it off with a grin. "See, even the help forgets their place sometimes." The music resumed. The crowd laughed again, though unease lingered. Amara stepped off the stage, each barefoot pressing cold against the marble. Her tray was gone, her dignity torn, but something new replaced it. Not shame, not silence, a promised dot, and somewhere in the back, a camera held the truth. Morning light spilled over the Lexington estate, but the house was restless. Phones buzzed. Voices rose behind closed doors. Newspapers thudded against the gate with headlines sharp enough to wound. The videos had spread. Overnight, Amara's humiliation on the stage, Brandon's drunken commands, her whispered refusals, the laughter of the rich, every second captured and replayed across the nation. The footage was everywhere. News channels, social feeds, blogs. Anger swelled like a tide, sharp, loud, impossible to silence. Inside the marble kitchen, Mrs. Lexington slammed her phone onto the counter. "Who recorded that?" Mr. Lexington barked back. "Focus on the damage. Do you see these headlines? Billionaire family mocks black maid at gala. Sponsors are calling. Investors are panicking." Brandon stumbled in, hair unkempt, eyes bloodshot. It was a joke. "They'll get over it." Mrs. Lexington's glare could slice glass. "A joke. You made us into villains. Do you know what this does to our image? They always forgive us, Brandon muttered. We're Lexingtons. But the words rang hollow. Even he felt it. Across town, Daniel Rivera refreshed his article. The comments poured faster than he could read. Outrage, fury, demands for justice. Protesters already gathered outside the estate gates. Signs raised high. Humiliation is not entertainment. Dignity is not optional. The Lexington name, once untouchable, was now ash on every tongue. Amara stood in the service hall, folding linens as if nothing had changed. Her silence was the same, but the air around her had shifted. Other servants whispered near the doorway, their eyes different now, no longer pitying, but respectful, even fearful. Did you see? One whispered, the whole world knows now. Another shook his head. She didn't even fight. She just stood there, and their voices, fell quiet as Amara entered. She placed the linens neatly on the shelf, her face calm. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Upstairs, the Lexingtons shouted. This journalist Rivera, he's finished. Mr. Lexington roared. We'll sue him into the ground. Double quotes. Mrs. Lexington's voice was colder. The sponsors have already pulled. Charity board members resigned this morning. Our empire bleeds. Brandon slammed his fist against the table. All because of her. She was nothing. Mrs. Lexington spat. And now she's the rope dragging us under. Silence followed. The truth hovered heavy. Amara had become the symbol of their downfall, and they couldn't erase it. That evening, news crews camped outside the estate. Reporters shouted questions through the gates. Protesters chanted. Social feeds swarmed with clips of Brandon's smirk, Mrs. Lexington's commands, Amara's whispered defiance. Inside, the family hid, curtains drawn, phones ignored. And Amara, she walked out the servants' entrance, shoes on her feet, head unbowed. No cameras caught her. No chance called her name. But she felt the shift in the air, the balance tilting. Her silence was no longer submission. It was power. The reckoning had begun. The Lexington name fell like glass shattering on marble. Every morning brought new headlines. Sponsors withdraw support. Investigation opens into Lexington Enterprises. Public demands boycott. What had been whispered in corners now blared across televisions. Racism, abuse, humiliation. Brandon's smirk played on repeat. His slurred commands dissected in primetime debates. Mrs. Lexington's sharp voice was quoted as proof of cruelty, and Amara's whispered no, sir, echoed louder than any speech. Inside the mansion, silence reigned where laughter once lived. Mr. Lexington paced the study, phone glued to his ear. Listen, we can recover. He stopped, listening, then slammed the phone onto the desk. Another investor gone. Mrs. Lexington sat rigid, makeup flawless but hands trembling. We built this empire for decades, she hissed. We will not lose it to a maid. Brandon barked a laugh, hollow. We already have. His eyes were dark, restless. Nights spent drinking, days spent hiding. The arrogance drained from him, leaving only bitterness that their empire wasn't bleeding, it was collapsing. Protests grew outside the gates. Signs rose like weapons. Now justice, no peace. Humiliation is violence. The chants shook the marble walls. Daniel Rivera's article spread globally, translated into languages Amara would never read, but the essence was universal. Dignity stolen, power abused, justice demanded, and she no longer folded linens in silence. She no longer bent her back to invisible chains. She walked through the estate one final time, uniform crisp, step steady. Servants watched as she moved, not as shadow but as presence. Some nodded slightly, quiet acknowledgement of what she had endured, and what she had brought to light without a word. At the door, Mrs. Lexington appeared, face pale beneath the powder. You think this makes you free? The matriarch spat. You're nothing without us. Nothing. Amara's gaze lifted, calm, unwavering. For the first time, she spoke without lowering her eyes. I was nothing because of you. Now the whole world knows who you are. The silence that followed was heavier than any insult. Amara stepped outside, the door closing behind her like the end of a chapter. Weeks passed. The Lexington fortune unraveled. Businesses severed ties. Properties went up for sale. Brandon's name became poison in elite circles. Mrs. Lexington stopped appearing in public, her reputation shredded. Mr. Lexington faced investigations that clawed at the very roots of his empire. And Amara, she sat in a small apartment, sunlight warm against her face, her mother's laughter soft from the next room. The medicine bottles were full now, not rationed. On the table lay a newspaper. The headline blared, Lexington family declares bankruptcy amid ongoing scandal. Amara folded it neatly, setting it aside. Her silence had never been weakness. It had been waiting, and waiting had bloomed into justice. Karma hadn't whispered. It had roared, and those who once mocked her barefoot steps now stumbled through ruins, while she walked steady into a future that was finally her own.